Welcome back to the Zim'sVideo Journal. I'm the Zim. This is my video journal. This is where I talk about everything that went down in my musical and artistic journey over the last week. And then the washing machine's going. I hope that's not, or the dryer. Hope that's not bothering or too loud. But I'm going to leave it, so whatever. Check it out, yo. Purging. I'm purging. I posted another video on my channel of my purging. So if you've been following along, which there's not many of you that are following along. If you remember up here, there was a whole bunch of junk. And I finally got the junk gotten rid of. So it looks a little nicer. There's still more I want to do. I'm thinking about taking out the closet pulls as well. I'm thinking about taking up this whole shelf system. But for now, at least it's getting a little cleaner. But in that purging process, there was a bag full of t-shirts. Went through them. There's actually some good gems in there. So look out for Wear It Wednesday. There might be some throwback shirts for Wear It Wednesday coming up this Wednesday. Well, there will be, definitely. So it was fun to do that little video. Really crappy video in terms of quality. But whatever. I did it on my iPod and on the front-facing camera, which is the worst one. So I did that. Happy 4th of July. Hope you have a good one. Get out there and have some barbecues and stuff. Watch some fireworks. So we're on the street. We'll get into the episode. It was 87 this week. But I finally got some more feedback. And I actually took a picture because I can't use my printer because I'm out of ink. And I haven't been able to buy any. But I want to tell you the feedback I got just because it's a talking point. Something to talk about. And see what you have to say as well. Because this is the first time I've gotten this type of feedback. And my thing with any feedback, if I hear it once, I basically just go, okay, there, I'll take it. Especially if it's somebody that I respect, and this is coming from a source I respect. I take it and I go, put it on the whiteboard essentially, the mental whiteboard, whatever. Remember that. Somebody said that. Let's see how it plays out from here. But this is what they said. One problem with your podcast, if I may offer a suggestion, is that it starts with too much talk. You need to start with the music, then go to a short, punchy billboard, quote unquote, about what the cast is about, and save the description, much abbreviated, of what your goals are and invitations to others to participate for the end. As you know, attention spans are very short these days. You got to get in and get out fast, or people will change the dial, so to speak. So, I don't know. There's a lot in there that I agree with. There's the short attention span kind of ideas. But here, I'm going to lay out what my thought process is. And hopefully I can do that. I didn't write this down, so I'm going to go off the top of my head. First, the idea of the short attention span idea. So, the podcast itself is long-form content. Period. It's over an hour and a half. It's long-form content. So, if anybody has a short attention span, they're not even going to give it a shot. So I'm not too concerned about the attention span aspect of things because it's clearly long-form content. Clearly it's not designed for somebody who has a short attention span. So I'm not really too worried about that. Is there too much talk at the beginning? I'm also not too worried about that because if somebody is familiar with podcast culture, there are tons and tons of interview-style podcasts that have a host intro. And I keep my host intro to 10 minutes or less. And if you listen to 1, 2, maybe 3, if you get to know me, get to know the podcast, you get to know that, oh, okay, if I don't want to listen to what Zim has to say, I can skip 10 minutes ahead and get into the conversation of the podcast. So I'm not too concerned about too much talk at the beginning. So those are two pseudo arguments for counters to the idea. So at this point, I'm not too concerned. Let's see what else. Yeah, and basically, so that's my biggest arguments against really taking this hard. I'd always take criticism to heart, and I think about it, and I go, like I said, if I hear it from more than one source, then I go, okay, maybe I should make a change, that kind of thing. So the other part of it, the biggest part of it for me, is I want to stay. I believe what I'm defaulting to and what my margin of error is all about is consistency. I want to stay consistent and predictable. And I believe I am. I'm just putting out an episode every Thursday, and the format is the same every week. I talk for a little bit, we have a conversation, music happens, conversation, music happens, and I end with a little bit of an even shorter bit of like ending stuff. So I'm erring on the side of consistency, I guess you could say, because if you don't like my rambling at the beginning and what I want to talk about, it's easy. You can just skip ahead, and it's easy to do that because on podcast apps, at least on the iTunes podcast app, they have like these 15-second skip aheads that you can do, and it takes you, or you can do double time, triple time, whatever it is, of the actual podcast can play back quicker, so you can do it that way. So I don't know. I just believe that if people know what podcast culture is all about, and that's kind of the target I'm going for more than anybody else, is people that already know about podcasts is who I'm targeting, because it's a different culture, and I don't want to be. I'm honestly as well resistant to, falling into the radio way of doing things, and that the way of, commercialized way of doing things. I want it to be real and honest and authentic, and I want to stick to that, and I believe that's what I'm doing. So that's just my thought process around that. When I responded to him, I said, thanks for the feedback, I'll take it to heart, which I do, and I just said I'll spare you the long version, because this is the long version. I didn't want to type it all out, because I didn't want to sound like, basically I didn't want to sound defensive, so I just was like, that's fine. He hopefully will be a guest on the podcast soon, and I know this is arbitrary, but I just wanted to keep it that way. He'll probably never watch this, because who does? You do, but there's not many more of you watching it. And then the last thing about that whole thing, it's really the podcast as a whole. There's the idea. It's not about the guest even, because he mentioned, get to the cast, talk about the guest, and it's really not about the guest. And it's the two main things about the podcast, honestly, are culture of the scene. It's the overarching idea of what's going on in the Seattle music scene and getting the stories about it. And if you're interested in learning and getting a deeper perspective on what the Seattle music scene is all about, then that's what will bring you back. It won't be individual guests, because that's a lot of people rely on their guests, and I'm trying to establish it's the idea that's important. It's not the guests that's important. Within the stories of the guests, we get to see nuggets of what it's like to be involved in our scene. And I learned that I can't go straight to what's the culture of the scene like, because it's just hard to go there straight away. So you have to let that guest have their space to tell their story, and then you can kind of disseminate and decipher the culture of the scene. And then the other big part of it is me. It's just, if you enjoy my way, then you'll enjoy the podcast. So, and that's what I'm trying to establish as well. And I don't want to bait and switch anybody. I don't want to go like, I'll build up an audience base and then switch it over and start talking more about the things that are important to me. I just want to lead and be honest with, I'm trying to get the word out about the Zim and Arock right there. We're on the street, culture, scene, everything, things I'm involved with. I'm trying to get the word out about all of that stuff. And so I'm trying to be honest and straight and do that. And I'm not trying to hide behind the podcast and then try to make it seem unauthentic that I'm also trying to get you to learn about what I'm involved with. So I hope that made sense. Let me know. I'd love to get more of your feedback. I'm, dying for more feedback, actually. So let me know. Speaking of feedback, what's your jam? What are you listening to this week? Post it in the comments. Let me know what you're listening to. Local, not local, whatever it is. What I've been listening to most is actually based on next week's podcast. It's going to be the General Mojos are on. Two of the people from the band are on, and they gave me their album before it was released, and one of the songs on that album, or EP or whatever they called it, is totally got me going. So I've been jamming on that all week. I'm not going to say what the song is because I'm not sure if they want the song titles out before they release the album and that kind of stuff. So we'll just wait on that. But I'll just say this. It's the last track. So when you get to it, or actually next week, I'm going to be putting in next week's podcast. So you'll get to hear it on next week's podcast. And I'll talk about in the intro of that. But this last week, we had Andy Altman from Gigtown. Super rad. The biggest part, and I've been really bad about my thing. I haven't written down anything for the last 3 weeks. I listened to the podcast I listened to the Andy Altman one 10 times maybe, just because I'm at work and I'm just listening to it and I play it again. And I like to hear my own voice and all that stuff. So I was just checking, and I didn't bother to write anything down, but it was great. I'm sure there was tons of stuff I could talk deeper on, but the one thing that I do remember about it is just basically more than what I was saying about culture of the scene. It's such a great way to get perspective on what our scene is like from somebody who's looking at it from the outside. And Andy's from the outside looking at it, but also getting involved with it. So he's looking at it, getting involved with it, and he's learning about it, and there's great, because it's one of my favorite episodes so far because of how much of that culture of the scene type of talk we got into. And I love it when we get there. I hate it. I mean, it's really boring for me personally when it stays on the surface about just what the projects are about, or not even about, but what the projects are, and then kind of thing. So, which doesn't typically happen. I mean, as long as there's one nugget in the conversation that seems like it's a point that somebody could actually learn something from, or an enlightened kind of, even if it's just one thing in the whole hour conversation, then I'm happy. If we talk all surface and there's this one nugget of this is what you can do if you're trying to do this, or just some kind of philosophical nugget about being a musician in our local scene, or being a part of our local scene, or being a musician in general, or being whatever it is, booker, promoter, blogger, anything it is that this whole thing that I'm working around, if there's one nugget of information that can get people to think a little bit, and if I feel that, then I'm happy. So that's where that is. That's basically all the kind of stuff that happened. Now I'm going to talk about stuff that happening. BrodieNation's the big one. Be sure to come out. theZim and Arock, my band, right there. theZim and Arock. Honest to God, we are sounding the best we've ever sounded. And last practice was amazing. Finally got to, there's this idea of a sound that I've been going for. Basically, we've been calling ourselves folk meets hip-hop for a long time. We were basically, when we first started, it was folk meets hip-hop, was kind of the root of our sound, because I was on acoustic guitar, harmonica, singing, rapping, and then he was on bass drum, snare drum, hi-hat, so it stays real groove-oriented drum beats. There's not a lot of fills, just transitional elements and stuff. And it was just that for a long time. And then we added the electronic elements, the backing tracks in, and it's been morphing the sound. We were really heavy on the electronic dance kind of thing, and we were pushing the sound that way, adding the bass, and so it was like folk meets hip-hop with this EDM element into it. And then, so we did that for a while, and then I've been really wanting to add more of this dirty rock sound, this kind of punk sound, and get it, I wanted to push it more to punk meets EDM kind of sound or something. And I don't know if we're punk meets EDM so much, but the last practice we had just really had that sound, this sound of this kind of more visceral rock, kind of punk, dirty, garagey kind of sound mixed in with this hip-hoppy folk EDM thing as well. We added that. We really got that element in there, and I'm really stoked on it. So if we can do what we did last practice on stage live, the next time we play, which will be BrodieNation on July 23rd at 2:55 p.m. in Carnation along the Tolt River. Be there. Anyways, I'll have the description of it or the link to the event page in the description, so you can find out all about it. But if we can play it like we did last practice on that stage, we'll blow minds. Basically, it'll just be jaws will be on the floor, which they already are. Anyway, I mean, every time we play a show, people are like, "What the heck was that? What did I just see?" And it's really awesome because we're unlike anything else in the scene, which I'm really proud of. I mean, what I say about We're on the Street is it's all about the original music scene. It's because that's what I'm into, and I think theZim and Arock push the original to the extreme. There's lots of original bands that are genre-based, but I think our band doesn't really have a genre. It's all about the original, and it's all about what we do. So that's pretty rad for me. I love it. And that's what I look for. Original. Like, what sounds original? The word on the street, 100th episode party is coming up. Finally got the poster done. I'll have the event page done shortly. Basically, I'll just leave it at that. I've talked about it before. I talk about the intros and all the podcasts, but August 25th is when it is at the substation. 5:30 p.m. is when we're starting. So keep your ear to the ground and stay tuned for more information on that. Or just if you listen to the podcast, then you're hearing a lot about it. But I got the poster done. I posted it on my personal Facebook page, and I'll be making the event page soon. Basically, one last thing I wanted to mention about this whole thing that I've been doing. Honestly, it's been growing really slow. The downloads, all that kind of stuff online. Maybe I am approaching it completely wrong, and it's turning everybody off to it. But I believe in my intuition, my ability. I believe in it. Whether or not it's accurate, I have no idea, but I believe in it. And my intuition is telling me the most people that listen to it are the band I interview. Maybe, I'll say about 70% of the time they actually listen back to it. They listen to it, but they don't get that that's the audience I'm trying to attract. So they don't yet understand that it's actually the people that are in this room are the people I also want to listen to the podcast. And I think there's people still think it's for an audience that's out there somewhere. No, it's for us. This conversation is for us as a community to talk to each other and learn about each other. It's not really, if I get listeners out there that are just purely fans or like listeners that aren't really associated with the scene, that's a bonus. But what the audience I'm really going for is us. And, I started at a place. I'm not like already a KXP DJ or working with a stranger or in a popular band, or I'm starting at this ground level place, so people don't necessarily respect my opinion as much as maybe they would if it was somebody else in the scene. So I'm just doing what I do, and hopefully eventually as they listen to how the passion, I guess you could say, that I'm presenting with this whole thing, that I'll eventually, win people over. Because that's what I'm trying to do. So it's for us. This conversation is for us as a scene to learn and talk about and grow the scene together between us. So there's that. I don't think the people the bands and the people that are in this room understand that you're also the audience that I'm going for. It's not an audience outside. And then they don't understand that it's a piece of content for them to share with their audience. I think they think they come here. There's like, I'd say about 50%, maybe a little 60%, maybe 50, somewhere in that range of the people that come onto the podcast then share it out to their audience. But the other 50%, other half, come on and assume that some audience that I have will hear them. And it's like, I'm not at that level yet. It's up to them to push this out to their audience. And so if anybody's going to listen to it. So there's that aspect of it. The other part of it that I believe is that listen to it are the friends and family, like the more family, like close friends and family of the people that are on the podcast will listen to it. But they're not exactly local music fans, they're just fans of that person that was on. And so they're not going to hit the subscribe button to the podcast. They're not going to come back to it. They're not going to interact with the podcast because they just want to listen to their son or daughter or their close friend that was talking about what they do. So there's that group of people. And I've yet to really access the group of people in the scene that are into the local music scene. I don't know how to access it yet, and I haven't got it yet. And part of it, I believe, plays into, actually, this is a good point with the Andy Altman thing about what I brought up with, there was something I brought up about how we're all musicians in the scene, and we all are really close to it. So we don't dance at shows. Typically, we kind of stand, we kind of watch. We don't, we're not that, he was saying about we're really cold to the reception of the Gigtown app and stuff. And I was kind of giving the analogy of why I thought that was. It's because we're kind of like, we don't get excited for our friends, bands, in this as fans, because we have our own bands and we want, I don't know, just this weird level. So I believe there's the element of that, but there also is the Seattle Freeze idea is real. No matter what you say, what you think about it, the Seattle Freeze is real, and we have a coldness to us as a community. We're not embracing and warm to things right away, and I believe that's part of why the growth of the podcast is slow, is because it's like prove it to. We have this kind of prove it first kind of mentality, and it's like, I'm doing the best I can. I'm hustling every week, and I'm trying to create content, and I'm out there trying to make it happen. And I'm bummed on one side that it hasn't grown faster, but it's not going to stop me, because it's fun, and I believe in 10 years from now, or longer even, people will look back on this and be like thankful that I created this thing. And it may take that long for it to be anything that the community recognizes as a valuable thing. But I don't know. It's hard to break that ice. It really is hard to break that ice with the I mean, I've been reaching out to other outlets saying, hey, I'm here. I'm doing something. Can we work together? Can you have me on your thing? And cold. No response. Just no response. Hardly. I finally, the email I read to you today was one person out of many that I've emailed, and he got back to me. So thankfully for that. But there's others out there that are not getting back to me. So anyways, but why I even started that whole process, because I want to be real. I want to be honest. I want to be real. That's my whole thing with everything I put on this YouTube page, everything I do with Word on the Street. It's about realness. It's about honesty. It's not about flashiness. It's not about shock and awe. It's not about anything else other than realness. And hopefully that can resonate with somebody and it generates some kind of momentum. I hope authenticity can be, a catalyst for what I'm trying to do, because that's all I can do. That's who I am, and I'd love to do more with everything I'm doing. But the one thing is, I feel it in me that the podcast is definitely giving me a little more street cred. There's a little bit more just street cred with it. It doesn't show up socially online. It doesn't show up in a lot of places, but there's this underlying, that guy's doing something, and I give him respect for that. But it's a tip of the iceberg kind of thing right now. So we'll see where it grows and see what happens. And you're a part of this, so we can do this together. So whatever you can do to help spread the word. Come to these shows, BrodieNation, the WOTS, the WOTS 100 episode party. Those types of things will help greatly. Sharing these videos, sharing the podcast, help immensely. And we'll leave it at that for now. Thanks for watching. I'm the Zim. This is the Zim's Video Journal. Remember, post what you're listening to in the comments of this video. And let's do this. You and me together. All right. Peace.